It's 2022, and Five Nights at Freddy's is more popular than ever. The games are ubiquitous, the merch is everywhere, the novelization made the New York Times bestseller list, and Security Breach made a stupid amount of money. With the series at the height of its popularity, we were shocked to learn that one of its most recent and presumably most successful games had been quietly abandoned. Dedicated players had spent countless hours and sometimes thousands of real dollars in-game, and they were angry. They felt like the developers had run away with their money, leaving the game to rot. So what happened? Was Five Nights at Freddy's special delivery just not making enough money, or is something more nefarious at foot? Is developer Illumix truly a terrible company in every way possible? Had this fancy, high-tech Silicon Valley startup simply used the popularity of FNAF as a vehicle to promote their augmented reality technology, only to abandon it the moment more lucrative opportunities presented themselves? Had they taken advantage of series creator Scott Cawthon and screwed him over? Is this even legal?
Well, that's kind of illegal, maybe, possibly.
Does the CEO of the company behind FNAF's most controversial title hate video games? Are you gonna subscribe to my channel? Please subscribe to my channel. On November 25th, 2019, the most controversial Five Nights at Freddy's game ever would be released, and it seemed to be going strong in the years that followed. FNAF has only gotten bigger since then, and anyone with the license for a game like this ought to be well positioned for success. However, just a few days ago, all mention of the game was purged from developer Illumix website without any explanation. There was no comment from series creator Scott Cawthon. By all accounts, the game had been quietly abandoned, never to receive any future content updates. The game was dead. Five Nights at Freddy's special delivery had always been a divisive game. Developed as an AR-centric mobile experience, the game was marred by controversy. Many considered it a shallow cash grab. While most agreed that the AR integration was novel, the core gameplay loop lacked depth, serving as nothing more than a glorified Skinner box. It didn't help that, like all gacha games, FNAF AR was somewhat aggressive in marketing its premium content to its generally younger player base. Regardless, players had spent countless hours and sometimes thousands of dollars within the game, and they expected it would continue to receive support for the foreseeable future. Things seemed to be going well. The game frequently showed up on the App Store's top game charts, it had a substantial marketing campaign, and it had a fancy, high-tech Silicon Valley startup behind it, Illumix. Sure, nobody had really heard of Illumix before, but they seemed legit enough. Scott had given them the license, and if he trusted them, surely they must be solid people, right? To the developers' credit, the game was supported for a few years, and while there was nothing mind-blowing, they certainly upheld their obligations as the developer and publisher of a gacha game like this. There were regular content updates, and they seemed to satisfy the fanbase for a while. However, in the wake of the recent Cancellation news, some have called the company's motives and behavior into question. There are allegations that Illumix CEO hates video games, and her company have been accused of using Scott and the FNAF IP as a stepping stone to further their own business goals. The following Glassdoor review of Illumix began to circulate. For those unaware, Glassdoor is a site where current and former employees of a company are able to leave anonymous reviews of their experience working there. Most of it is spent railing against Illumix CEO Karen Cena, pointing out that she's never been in the industry, was 26 years old at the time, that this was her first job, and that she was a liar. Frankly, I find the way they immediately try to discredit her for being a young woman rather off-putting. Most egregiously though, they suggested that despite running a game company, Karen Cena doesn't even like video games, a truly heinous crime. It's obvious that this review is from a disgruntled former employee. The title is literally terrible company in every way possible. That doesn't mean what they say isn't true, but what gives me pause is the way they immediately attack the CEO based on her age and experience level. Those are crappy arguments. It's true that the CEO didn't have any prior industry experience, but how could she have? She was 26. Prior to founding the company, she graduated from MIT, then went on to get like 3 supplementary degrees from prestigious schools like Stanford and Cambridge. More concerning is the reviewer's allegation that Karen Cena does not like video games. Starting a game company despite having no interest in video games would look pretty bad, and it would support the allegations that perhaps Illumix did simply use Scott's FNAF license in order to further their own ends. So I looked into the CEO's academic history to see if she showed any interest in games. Sure enough, in what I believe was the first of her 3 master's degrees, she worked with Professor Felix Fischer, a Harvard, Cambridge, Microsoft super genius guy, whose research seems to sit at the intersection of computation and game theory.
A game theory.
No, not that game theory. The academic discipline game theory. You know, the one that your show is a play on despite it constantly screwing up your SEO and being the reason your channel is called The Game Theorists. Considering Illumix CEO studied with this dude, she had to be deeply interested in rational agents interacting strategically, and that's very relevant to game design and development. So I'd encourage everyone to take this review with a grain of salt. It's obviously from a disgruntled former employee, and a lot of the criticism seems silly to me. Average T has released a couple couple of really great videos on this topic, and on one of them, someone left a comment in which they claimed to be a former employee of Illumix, having worked there around 2020 to 2022. It started out normal because their business was great, and then when FNAF AR came out, stocks were going high until 5 months later after the project, the CEO wanted to quit the project. Whoa, stocks were going high? Illumix isn't a publicly traded company, they don't have a share price. I'm not sure this person knows what they're talking about. Maybe they're referring to the broader stock market, but at most that would only impact financing, not FNAF AR's revenue. Because the company was losing money drastically, they still tried to continue the project, but a few months after, when she was about to quit the project, she actually quit the project she made because the Disney project was also failing, so they decided to rebrand their company. They said they will continue the project in about 2024 to 2025. By the way, this is my son's account. I don't have an email connected, so I am using my son's account. What the f is this person talking about? This is literally incomprehensible, and not just because there's zero punctuation and the first letter of every word is capitalized. There's just no chance that the person who left this comment actually worked at Illumix, and even if they somehow did, I highly doubt that they have any insights into the CEO's decision-making process. It's true that Illumix and their CEO probably aren't interested in games anymore. 3 years ago, AR mixed reality technology was really trendy and exciting, and combining it with proven gacha game mechanics and a popular license like Five Nights at Freddy's was a good idea. However, markets change. It looks like Illumix sees the future of their business outside of video games. Right now, it looks like that's in more mainstream areas like sports, news media, commerce, and politics, not games. Finally, in Average T's follow-up video, which is also an entertaining watch that I encourage you to check out, the link is in the card in the description, he speculates as to whether Illumix abandoning FNAF AR is even legal.
And if they're really pulling the plug, which it's looking most likely, well, that's kind of illegal, maybe, possibly.
Illegal means it's against the law. The police arrest you and you go to court with a case like, the people of the United States of America versus Theft King. That's what illegal means. I believe T is actually suggesting that Illumix perhaps breached their contract with Scott in doing this. While it's true that we have no idea what that agreement looked like, we do know that this was a license deal. Scott didn't publish FNAF AR like he did Security Breach. He sold Illumix the right, but not necessarily obligation to make a game based on his franchise. Scott was probably paid money, and unless he's also an investor in Illumix, which I've seen zero evidence for, I doubt he put up any of his own. FNAF AR was always controversial, and it felt cash grabby to begin with. It was also the first fully licensed FNAF game that Scott had little to do with, and it's understandable that us fans were really apprehensive about it. Now, the game has been quietly purged, and yeah, that's crappy. That's just not how you treat your players, and it's not a good way to do business. Illumix should have at least made a statement telling us the game wouldn't be supported by any future content updates. However, I don't believe this comment is actually from an Illumix employee, and I don't believe that they're going to resurrect the game a couple of years from now. They probably won't even have any game developers on staff by 2024. It's over, guys. FNAF AR is over. I really feel for the people who enjoyed the game and spent a lot of time and money on it under the assumption that it would continue to be supported for years to come. However, with freemium games like this, there's never any guarantee that a given update won't be its last. These games pop up and disappear all the time, especially licensed ones. How much post-release support should players reasonably expect? At least a few years, I hope, but 5 years? 10? That's expensive, and if the game isn't bringing in money, how can we expect the developers to continue to support it? I know some will argue that they invested money into FNAF AR and that this is a big slap in the face, but it's not like you were ever going to recoup that investment. Just like any MMO or game with microtransactions, at some point you're going to stop playing it, and all the time and money you spent will have been for naught. However, that doesn't take anything away from the enjoyment you got from the game or the memories you made while playing it. You still have access to all the stuff you paid for. You can still play it. The game hasn't been crippled in any way. I think Illumix business just changed, and they no longer see game development as their most promising path to success. They should have handled sunsetting FNAF AR better, but I don't think that this is that big a deal, guys. I don't think that we as a community or Scott have been betrayed. I don't think it's fair to attack the CEO of Illumix over this. People are taking ridiculous statements like these as fact when there's zero evidence supporting them. Most importantly, I suspect many of the people yelling loudest about FNAF AR's cancellation don't play the game and probably never played it. However, if you do or did play FNAF AR, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What was your experience like? What was your expectation for post-release content updates? Did the game meet your expectations while you played it? How long do you think a game like this ought to be supported? And how do you think a studio should handle it when they do need to pull the plug on a freemium game like this? Seriously, let me know down below. It's not like I ever played FNAF AR. Anyway, thanks for watching.
What just happened?
Oh dear, Freddy sure isn't himself today.
What?
Wait for Freddy to decloak, then use your shocker to reset him.
Oh, yeah.
After when she was about to quit the project, she actually quit the project she made because the Disney project was also failing, so they decided to rebrand their company. They said they will continue the project in about 2024 to 2025. By the way, this is my son's account. I don't have an email connected, so I am using my son's account.